My name is Alden Peters. I'm a documentary filmmaker and the co-founder of Casa Vera Productions with Pat Murphy, who's back there taking pictures. I studied film at the NYU Film School, then worked for a few years in the archival departments of a few documentaries, one about Bill Cosby, which is coming out early 2015, and then one called Letters from Baghdad about Gertrude Bell, who was the highest ranking woman in the British Empire around World War II, or just after World War I, and drew the modern day borders of Iraq. After that, I was the head of production at a startup called Alleywire, which is where I met Alex at Crowdfunding Unite, giving a similar presentation to this about crowdfunding video, and then recently just co-founded Casa Vera Productions with Kat. We're doing documentary work through Casa Vera. We're both documentary filmmakers, and also for clients doing crowdfunding pitch videos and campaign strategy, which we got into out of necessity from the different documentaries we were working on. So this presentation, Strategies for an Effective Crowdfunding Pitch Video. I wanted to focus specifically on the strategies, so that you have these tools in your toolbox to create a video for your own campaign. So hopefully after giving some examples of different campaigns and videos, that you will find something in there or some path that you can take for your own project.
Is this presentation going to be available, so you don't have to take
sure.
So you'll just make it available?
Yeah, of course. So the crowdfunding pitch video. So crowdfunding in general, as you know, is about raising capital by building and engaging an audience. So that crowd portion of the crowdfunding is very important. Without having an engaged audience, you're not going to raise the money that you need, and the video is your primary outreach tool. It's the first thing people tend to look at when they look at your campaign besides the page itself. And I know when I first look at a campaign, I watch the video and then I scroll down, and if it passes those two tests, then I'll make the decision whether or not I want to donate to this project or not. If one of the two or both of those are not impressive, then I will definitely not donate to that campaign. And people typically are similarly ADD when they're online, especially if they're kind of perusing crowdfunding websites, unless there's somebody that you know going to your campaign that you send them the link to. There was somebody commented on the event, the meetup.com event page, who I thought was going to be in the audience here, but I don't think he made it. But he posted the link to his crowdfunding page, and it was really impressive. The video and the campaign page, I thought he did a good job. So I was going to shout him out, but he didn't show up. So to start with, let's do an example of a crowdfunding video. So this was a campaign that Pat found online for an Ebola vaccine.
Hi, this is Stephen Hall. I'm the founder and CEO of Penchmore Pharmaceuticals, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Ebola vaccine development funding campaign. Penchmore is a biopharmaceutical company that develops vaccines and makes antibodies and biomaterials. This funding campaign is specific for the Novavax vaccine technology that's being used to make an Ebola virus vaccine, which we call Ebola. I developed the Novavax system some years ago.
I'll give
That's
enough. Sold. Great campaign video, and I hope that's something we can all emulate. Obviously that wasn't very engaging at all. I think that this person, I've actually watched quite a bit of that video because I was interested, and he definitely knows what he's talking about, and that's probably much more appropriate when looking for the kind of money he actually needs as opposed to a crowdfunding video, but that's definitely not going to engage a lot of people. Also the text, or the campaign itself, is nothing but text, as you can imagine. So what kind of things can we do to be more effective? The first is story, which we were kind of talking about just a minute ago. I'm going to talk about three things, story being one of them. And it's kind of what's the story that you're telling as opposed to what are you selling? So who, I guess, in the audience, right? Do you do media? Are you crowdfunding for a media type of thing? You said you work in television.
No, well, the crowdfunding, I've got two projects that I'm currently working on that I'm looking to source. One is a nonprofit effort. Another one is this, I'm going to be distributing these electric unicycles. I'm setting up a distribution company for that, and I'm going to require some capital for that, which I was planning on doing some crowdfunding for that.
Cool. So I think it's certainly the story about the nonprofit work you were saying. I think that's much more inherent than maybe what's the story that you're telling for an electric unicycle, but kind of finding what that is or why you care, what your passion is behind the project is definitely important, because especially when we're watching video, we're expecting to watch a story, just because that's like the films that we're watching. We don't tend to enjoy PowerPoint presentations on video. I don't know if people like live presentations on video either, but this one definitely didn't have any of that. And it also didn't have any production value, which we mentioned earlier. Will your passion and story shine through with a low production value? I think that to an extent it can, and it also depends what you're raising money for. My belief is that the production quality really does matter, even subconsciously, when you're watching something and you can tell the quality's not good enough, or it's not like at a professional baseline standard, that kind of takes away your credibility as somebody that's producing this product. This, of course, is coming from the perspective of raising money for films, where I think that's especially true, because if you can't produce a professional level crowdfunding video, how can you produce a professional film? And that definitely can seem daunting if you don't have any production experience or the budget for that, but that's hopefully what this presentation is about. And the third thing is audience engagement. So how can video be used during your campaign to keep the engagement up? So it's not just people making that one donation and then kind of not participating any longer in your campaign. So for the storytelling, the donors are funding you and your project in that order. Why are you the person that should be bringing this project into existence, and can you pull it off? Those are the things that I know I definitely look for when I'm watching a video. Does this person have any, or company who's ever putting on this crowdfunding campaign, do they have the credibility or the qualifications to actually make what they're saying that they're going to make? And also telling that story of how you got to where you are. So Pat and I are working with a client now where that was something that we had to keep reminding them to say, because they were not including in this video that we were doing for them why they were making this product. And the backstory behind that was kind of the story that you can include into your video that gets people much more interested than just listing specs on the product. Also prove it and show tape. So that comes from funding for any like film, and I'm sure like selling television packages too. Like if you don't have anything to show other than just an idea, you're much less likely to make that sale than if you actually have shot something with your iPhone even. And I think that matters here. So if it's a film, showing clips from that film or showing that you can make the film, or if it's a product, showing that product. Authenticity matters. I'm not a big proponent of making commercials and using that as a crowdfunding video, and of acting very salesy. I think that authenticity of who you are and why you're making this project is what gets people passionate enough to give their money to you, more than just the item itself. Though it is slightly different if you have an actual tangible product that you're selling essentially through the crowdfunding campaign. You will get a lot more donors that are making that donation because they want to receive that product. Of course, the commercial-like ones can be very successful, and I'm going to give an example in a minute where of an Indiegogo campaign where their crowdfunding video was a trailer for a film that they hadn't made yet. And that was actually really successful because it did these things. It proved that this filmmaker could make the film. It also looked really good. And it was a successful campaign because of that. share your story again, and your donors and audience are kind of participating with you in this campaign. Normally it's very early on in a company or a project, and so kind of being the early adopters of that is something that a lot of people can feel a lot of pride for doing that. So making sure that you maintain that engagement and keep them included along the way is important as well. And it's a call to arms, changing passive viewers of your crowdfunding campaign into a devoted supporter of your project. And to do that, you need more than just a commercial. You need to make a connection with them. An example that tells a good story is this next one, Credence. So this is a short sci-fi film by friend and filmmaker Mike Bonato. For this, I consulted a little bit with him with the campaign strategy. He does this type of stuff for a living, so he didn't need that much help. But let's take a look at the trailer for this.
I talk to you today not as your president, but as a father. Reports have confirmed another storm destroying much of what's left. The evacuation will hurt more than many can bear, but letting the children go is our only hope. As our world changes, we have been forced to question what it means to be human. Our purpose is and always has been to survive. It's why we build families. But what do we survive for? Is it love and being loved? That sense of touch, that act of kindness? Or is it faith that our children will do better? Because we remember the dreams we had when we were young. We're only made of stars, flaming what we can remember.
So that trailer proved he could make a movie, which is what he was raising money for. The interesting thing, and what we talked about beforehand, was he made that trailer before he had a script. He had this concept for film, and what we were talking about is, should he raise money for all of it, or should he pay something out of pocket, invest to make something like this, and use that to raise even more money than he can make in the onset?
So he didn't raise any to make that? Is that what you're saying?
No, he did that out of pocket. And he raised £22,000, 6,000 was his goal. And that's an example of a video. It's not like a commercial per se, but in terms of a film, that's very much like a commercial. And right underneath it in the campaign, he had this sort of behind-the-scenes video that explains why the film needed to be made, talked about the funds and where they would be going. And it kind of like really begins with the purpose for this project, and then goes into what they need to help kind of persuade a viewer that after watching that trailer, you might want to know more about the project. You won't watch the whole thing of this, but you can watch a little bit of it.
So what's quite beautiful about our story is that it tells a moral message that in any kind of tragedy, it's important for any couple to come together and support one another. So what we're trying to do is resettle the balance here and make something which essentially no one has ever seen before. This is what it looks like when science fiction is progressive and when it is forward-looking.
Gay characters tend to be defined almost entirely by their sexuality. Their sole purpose in a film is because they're gay. My name's Alden Peters and I play John in Credence.
The film essentially follows the story of a family and explores what happens when they're torn apart with the evacuation of Earth.
And it goes on from there. It's kind of a longer behind the scenes video, but that's much more pitch video-esque than just the trailer. So I threw this slide in the audience and who you're sharing your story with. I just spoke, a friend of mine works marketing at USA Network at NBC Universal, and we were talking about millennials and baby boomers. And I think this, we were kind of talking about this earlier beforehand, but this is the US population by age and sex as of June 2014. So the baby boomers are up at the top, and then down below that sharper spike are the millennial generation, about 18 to 35. What was really interesting, what she said is, for the ratings at USA, their target demographics are 18 to 49, and the boomers have completely aged out of that demographic, which means that for television, it's just the millennials down there that's kind of like the large cohort to market toward, which I found really fascinating. Also, another interesting thing, the most people of an age group, 23-year-olds in the country. There are more 23-year-olds than any other age group, which is kind of an interesting thing to think about. I mean, right now, obviously, if we're doing crowdfunding campaigns, that type of stuff isn't as crucial, but as years go on and those boomers get older and older, there's more like purchasing power with the millennials, that's the target demographic. And that it comes into play in these next two examples for films, one of which was definitely targeting millennials and Generation Z, which is under 18-year-olds down there. And then the second example, which targets the older generations. So I have three kind of like production strategies for creating your pitch video here. The first is to do it yourself. If you're a small team of people and you have within your personal capability any way to create the video, that is one thing you can do. That's definitely not cost prohibitive if you have the equipment and skill set available, but you should have the skills, of course. Second is if you have somebody in-house, if you are an organization perhaps or a larger company, that you have somebody that within your company does video, either for the company or on his or her own, you can do that. And the third is to hire a production company, of course, which can be either a sole proprietor or a company itself. And that relationship can go from just shooting your script and your idea to hiring them as a creative agency to help create this kind of video content with you. The first one is Do It Yourself, which is a documentary called Coming Out that Pat and I produced. So this is a feature-length documentary that we've been working on for a few years. Just finishing up now and submitting it to film festivals. It's a personal narrative, a coming out narrative. That's me, you can tell. And so that comes into play in the pitch video and why we made certain decisions. So we can watch, it's kind of long, but we'll watch just the beginning of it.
Well, we were here at the house.
What?
Alden was over here and I was sitting on the bed.
Yeah?
Well, he sat us down and turned on the camera. Oh my God, he has two!
Jacqueline, did he really? Did he really tell you? Yeah. This is a documentary about me coming out of the closet. I don't know why I'm getting nervous. I didn't think I was going to be so nervous. Interested in women. I'm out of the closet. Should I say that? Because I'm out of the closet? My name's Alden. I'm the producer and director and also the subject of Coming Out.
I'm Brenda Lopez and I'm the co-director for the documentary Coming Out.
Coming Out is a feature-length documentary.
It's about letting everybody else know who you are.
This film started when I decided I was going to come out of the closet to my friends and family, so I thought that I would film it.
The story is more than just about coming out in that initial moment. It's more about accepting that into your life and the before and the after of trying to find where you fit into a community.
We also see how his family reacts to his decision of coming out and sort of how his relationship with them changes.
It turns out there's a part of him that none of us knew.
This film also explores how we portray ourselves online versus in real life. Do we need to tell everyone our sexual preference? Do we need to update everyone on what we're doing every day? Are these ways we're using social media important, and why?
So with this kind of pitch video, the story that we were telling there was this journey that you go on in the film itself. And with the main character, one thing, I guess this is the next bullet point. We built the audience from nothing. So with this campaign, the crowd portion of crowdfunding was really important to us. That we went from just a handful of people making this film in our apartments to needing somebody to care about it financially to raise the money, but also to see if people are going to want to watch it later. So that was, I'm going to talk a little bit more on audience engagement on that. We did like a simultaneous campaign to collect coming out stories from younger folks as well to encourage engagement in a non-financial way. And our target audiences are, like I mentioned before, millennials and Generation Z, the youngest generation, for people to watch it, and then also millennials and older to donate to the project. Our focus was obviously LGBT, but the other audiences became really apparent as we were doing this campaign, specifically that kind of digital element and this digital life theme attracted a lot more people who were not, and I didn't identify as LGBTQ that we weren't quite expecting. We should speak of why. So this was what I really wanted to talk about, is that in that video, we see from Pat, we see from Brenda, the two editors, and all of this was for the specific person of giving me credibility as a filmmaker to make a personal project. So that if this was just me talking to the camera about this film that I wanted to make and why I wanted to make it, that happened to be about myself and my family, that would definitely come across as very self-centered. And you might not think that I could pull that off on my own, but by showing that there was a handful of other people working on this project, it kind of adds that credibility aspect that I talked about before. It proves that I could pull it off. There were scenes from the film, and also we did a test screening just before this campaign at Rutgers University. We handed out questionnaires and had people write a couple sentences about the film, so we used that in the pitch video as well to get even more input on the quality of the film in a way that we couldn't necessarily do on our own. And all of that is, again, just kind of proving that we were people that could create this project and pull it off and building trust with our audience. The pros and cons of doing it ourselves, there was no extra cost. We could wrangle people whenever we needed to. We were very flexible in our shooting and post-production timeline schedule because of that. But we didn't have any outside perspective on how effective this pitch video was. So if I were looking at it now, it's very long. It's about 5 minutes, I think, which is much longer than I would do now if I were to redo that video. We also had to halt working on the film during this whole campaign.
So what is the ideal length, do you think? 2 to 3 minutes max?
2 to 3 minutes max, yeah. The shorter the better, probably. If you can pack all of that into 2 minutes, the better. 2 to 3 minutes max. After a minute, I think all of us kind of stop watching whatever it is we're watching online. So if you can just like get people, and that's kind of one thing that Credence does really well, is get you passionate or like interested enough in the project to keep watching. So you watch that trailer and you're interested, then you'll watch the other video, which starts with the purpose about why this film needs to be made, and then goes into finally what you need the money for.
For me, I would have had a different opinion. Like this, I would be more inclined to donate to this than I would to Credence. Only because it's a sci-fi. I feel like it's a detached fictional dramatization, and here it's somebody's life. In my case, my son came out when he was, 19, and it's like, I don't know, and not just because of that, but I think there's a connection. I think documentary films might be an easier sell than dramatization in sci-fi.
The sci-fi audience is a lot smaller.
Yeah.
So here's another example of a documentary film, Letters from Baghdad. This is one that we did in-house, so I was working in there with our archival database for this project, and as this talk about the Kickstarter happened, because I had previously done that one for Coming Out, me and the executive producer kind of planned and strategized this campaign, and then I did the campaign video in-house for them. So we can watch this.
Are we recording? Do you have any shine alert powder? Start the action. I'm Sabina Kranju. And I'm Ziva Olban. And we're the directors of Letters from Baghdad, a documentary film about the brilliant and adventurous Gertrude Bell, sometimes referred to as the female Lawrence of Arabia. She was the most powerful woman in the British Empire, helping to reshape the Middle East after World War I.
She drew the borders of Iraq, helped install its first king, and created the Baghdad Museum of Antiquities that was ransacked in 2003 during the American invasion.
Because she was fluent in Arabic and had traveled extensively into the uncharted Arabian desert, she was recruited by British military intelligence, becoming its first female officer.
She was a trailblazer. But she also had another side. Her personal life was full of tragedy and losses, and to this day, her death from an overdose of sleeping pills at age 58 remains a mystery.
When we first began researching, we discovered that Gertrude Bell had left behind more than 1,600 letters and 7,000 photographs.
We wanted to bring her words to life, so 2 years ago we decided to look for footage in archives around the world, and what we discovered blew us away.
Seeing the footage of the Middle East shot in the early 1900s is such an incredible contrast to what we've grown accustomed to seeing of Iraq, Egypt, and Syria. We're asking the archives to go into their vaults and digitize the original 35mm negatives. Much of the film has never been seen before. The process is very expensive, and this is why we need your help. The funds from our Kickstarter campaign will go to digitizing archival footage, but it won't just be available for our use. It will be available for other filmmakers and the public.
We decided to launch our campaign during Women's History Month because we feel very strongly that stories such as Gertrude Bell's need to be brought to a large audience.
In honor of Women's History Month, we invite you to honor a woman in your life, either on our website or in the credits of the film. Please join us on this exciting journey and spread the word about our campaign. We really appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this campaign was targeted at a much older demographic, obviously, with a black and white historical documentary. But also specifically the people that we were going after were the networks of the executive producer and the two directors seeking out larger donations. The film itself was a much more kind of like dignified campaign, I would call it, compared to Coming Out. The film received a National Endowment for the Humanities grant. Tilda Swinton just signed on to be the voice of Gertrude Bell's letters. And so there was kind of like a lot more reservations in this campaign video than the one that we did for Coming Out, where we were showing scenes. We were basically putting everything out there because we were definitely targeting a younger demographic that expects all of that stuff without it for free. Whereas this one is people that kind of understand the process of making the film. That's why they didn't list their credentials. They're both award-winning filmmakers, but they wouldn't say anything about their past work. They wanted to keep it very low-key, mostly because they were sending this to people that they knew. Again, the target audiences were older folks. And the in-house pros and cons. So we shot this video and edited it, changed the script, shot it again, and then edited it, changed the script a third time, and then shot it, and then edited the video that you see here today. So this was like a screenshot from one of the first run-throughs that we had done, and that was all because we were doing it in-house. And I was there at their disposal, so they were definitely taking advantage of that. The cost for them was an in-house rate, so that was really good for them. It was the same as the archival stuff. And that kind of discussion and back and forth, created that much more streamlined campaign video compared to the Coming Out one, which I feel like is a little bit more all over the place. And that's, we even interviewed the executive producer there, and she didn't make it into the final cut. Also, it didn't take the director's time away from the project because I was working on it instead of him. So this one there's no video for. That's a shot we just, this is a client of Pat and mine. The Puppy Phone, which is a GPS smart collar that has an integrated social media component that keeps your dogs and your social lives, your lives social and safe. Let's look that tagline there. But we shot this just the other week. They hired us to do this for them because they didn't have anybody in-house that could do the video. They also had us act more as a creative agency, putting in our input into what the campaign video should be like, as opposed to just shooting a script that they wrote, or shooting the script that they wrote and then also shooting other things that we think might be more effective than what they wrote. For this company, their primary motivation for doing this campaign is market research and finding out what specific features that the pet parents who would be buying this collar would like, as opposed to just raising money. They just want to do this before going into production. The target audience is pet parents, and so we're including stories of pet parents and what their pets mean to them into the campaign video as well. Because everybody wants to see dogs. The pros and cons. For them, they have Pat and I at their disposal to conceptualize their video and put in those fancy things like graphic effects like you mentioned. The con is that it can be cost prohibitive for a small company or somebody that's like bootstrapping a little project to hire a production company. It's engagement. Not just the pitch video. You can use this video content throughout your campaign beyond just that one video that people see, whether it's an update throughout the campaign or after the campaign. Again, it's your primary outreach tool for most people. And if you really want to turn those passive viewers who are hopefully now supporting your project to keep posting about it and stay with you through the duration of your campaign, video is one of the really effective ways to keep them intrigued and keep your campaign momentum up. It also makes them feel valued. I don't know, have any of you donated to a crowdfunding campaign and then never heard from them? Yeah. And then you think, well, that was a waste of money. But other times you donate to them and sometimes you feel like really good they definitely, you can tell from the way that they're corresponding with you or the way that they're updating you. This is one, for example, of Vincent that I donated to. That they keep still posting these behind the scenes things of their project. And it shows that they definitely value your contribution. Not necessarily you specifically because there's a lot of people, but that's something that you can do to let them know they've put their money in the right place. There can definitely be a production quality difference. You can be much more forgiving than with the pitch video itself, especially if it's like a in-the-moment thing that you're shooting when you reach your campaign goal and you just want to send a video out as opposed to just a written message. You don't have to, but I know for coming out we did for after the first 24 hours and then when we reached our goals. And it was just me setting up the camera, probably wasn't even in focus properly, but people don't really mind. They just like to see a human face. An example of this. So this is one of the, this is a little bit boring, but it's 55 seconds, so just bear with me for 55 seconds. Or not. Talk you through what that was. It was an audio recording of Lowell Thomas talking about Gertrude Bell, and the image that it shows is just this throughout the whole video. And that was one of the videos that we updates that we had sent during the campaign that continues this narrative of discovering Gertrude Bell's story. So with this, and there was another one that was just images, was look at this piece of content that we found. We found Lowell Thomas talking about Gertrude Bell, isn't this awesome? And those types of things people were responding to in the campaign.
How often would you do the update videos to where it wasn't annoying, it was compelling?
We tried to do some sort of like visual update or like piece of content update every week of the campaign, and included other just email updates every week as well. They also had, I think you heard in the pitch video, this Honor a Woman campaign kind of tied into their Kickstarter, which was really effective. I mean, it was very much tied in. It was a specific perk within the Kickstarter campaign. An interesting thing, though, is that I think maybe a week or two or a month or two after the campaign ended, somebody sent a message complaining we hadn't sent any updates. And it was like a very bitter message about like, it's been 2 months and I haven't heard a single thing from this project, what are you doing? So, which is the Van Gogh one that I was loving. Vincent did the total opposite of that, where they were for a little while just like sending a lot of videos to the backers. And then the production quality difference, it was just an audio recording of an image. And it was like spliced together and it didn't sound that great. This is one that we did for coming out. This was an update. We sent this one. It's not gonna work. After the campaign ended. Lost our.
Is it into it?
I think
I'll put it into it. I'll take a look at the bar.
It's okay, it's not that great.
I apologize.
But we can see thumbnails. See? So that's just us talking to the camera. There's some behind the scenes stuff.
Click the YouTube button.
Yeah,
click maybe.
Yeah, click the YouTube button.
Maybe
Might,
open a YouTube, yeah. There we go.
Just wanted to give you an update on where we are with the film and what we're doing right now, because we've kind of been working, not posting very much and not keeping you up to date on what's going on. So this is us showing you what we're up to.
It's been a long journey creating this documentary.
During the 2 years of production, I did a lot of the coordination. So coordinating with interview subjects, I was often doing sound recording, also driving around the country, I helped Alden conceive the main idea and kind of get across what we want to say in this film.
I helped Alden as the outreach coordinator for Coming Out. Basically, my entire role was to reach out to different organizations, whether they're LGBT organizations, political organizations.
One of my main responsibilities was to go on YouTube to find amazing videos to include in a documentary. The video submission idea was a way for people to do more than just contribute financially to the project.
The Kickstarter campaign was very successful. We had a pretty ambitious goal and we were very happy to reach that goal. It's a really great feeling to see so many people that contributed to the Kickstarter campaign. It shows that there's a large amount of interest for this film.
It was amazing.
Nick goes up from there with more specifics about where we were. I minimized my presentation.
Alt tab.
Alt tab. Do alt tab.
There you go.
And so what she was mentioning and what I pointed out earlier was this simultaneous campaign to get people to submit their coming out stories during our crowdfunding campaign. So these were totally separate. Daisy, who was working, she was doing this exclusively while we were doing the Kickstarter campaign, trying to find our target audience, get them to contribute to the film and participate in the film in a non-financial way. And they were both linked to each other. So if you submitted your coming out story during the length of our Kickstarter campaign, then you get a perk. And then on the perks on Kickstarter, it says this one is for if you submit your coming out story. And so there's a little bit of crossover there with the hope that this one specifically would lead more traffic into our Kickstarter campaign. And if not, we at least have people interested that we hope will see the film on the signage. Just soon. That update video that you saw was shot in advance, probably like 6 to 8 months before we posted that. We shot most of those interviews and had it put together. And then Pat and I did ours later. And that's one of the advantages of the do-it-yourself way, or if you have somebody in-house to produce your video content, you can keep doing this type of content after your campaign ends without hiring the production company again, or shooting it all in the very beginning while you're doing your feature video.
Was your campaign 20,000? I see in some of them, some projects will go like tens of thousands beyond what they're looking for. What happens to that money?
You keep it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What, you just expect it to make a better quality all-around product, whatever it is, or?
The hope is that you have like your stretch goals in mind, so that if you do achieve your goal, that you have a totally make up arbitrary new goal that you have and and what you're going to use that money for. You don't have to, but that kind of, at least in theory, like keeps that momentum going, so that people don't think, oh, they've reached their goal, there's no point in contributing to this project anymore. They have a new goal that they're trying to reach. In terms of what you actually do with the money, that is up to you.
By the way, leading up to the campaign, what were the most influential factors towards making sure you raised enough money? Like, what contributed to the most, I guess, the bottom line of raising money?
Spreadsheets, I would say. I am doing most of the prep work, about 80% of all the prep work before launching the campaign. So a lot of research into the press that we were going to try to cover us, reaching out to contacts, organizing contact lists, writing emails, campaign updates throughout the campaign, even the thank you email for when we were successful or not successful, like having everything ready to go so that by the time the campaign started, we weren't sitting there writing emails. They were already written and we just hit send on the first day. That was really helpful. And
so did you hear back a lot from the PR, I guess, that you did? In other words, I guess, the reporters writing about it heard from you for the first time when the campaign started, or did you like give them a heads up?
Some we gave a heads up. A few of them wouldn't write about it in the beginning. They wanted to see if you were successful. Mashable posted about our film, and that was the biggest press thing that we got. It wasn't, didn't go live until after the campaign ended though. And then there was like a bunch of other press after Mashable covered it. But Mashable specifically said that they don't want to run a piece on the campaign unless they know it's going to be successful.
Yeah.
But the other ones, I think, other things that we did, and this is something that we would not do for Letters from Baghdad, for example, was we had like these Twitter campaigns to try to get everybody that supported the campaign to tweet at a certain celebrity at the same time. And that did work for Dan Savage, as Savage Love, a column in Seattle. That after we did that, the next week he had posted the trailer to our, and the link to our Kickstarter on The Stranger. But having this kind of secondary campaign was really successful, and it was also successful for Letters from Baghdad with the Honor a Woman, because those types of things made people feel like they were much more involved in the project than just giving their money.
Sorry, Mashable. So would you view that as like a big, like missed opportunity fundraising wise, or you're still happy for the press because at least once it comes out?
I mean, that's the silver lining, or the bright side of it. It was a bit frustrating that and I harassed him a little too much to try to get it done the week before, and I think that makes it worse sometimes. Keep asking him to get it done. I know at Alleywire we had a lot of people that when we were covering these companies, they were harassing us to get the videos launched in time for their Kickstarter, time for something, and that just kind of like caused so much more frustration in the workflow of the company that it definitely didn't happen the more that they asked, and I would imagine I did the same thing to that writer. If it came out the last week of our campaign, that would have been really cool, I think. But it didn't. So.
But for the other ones, we're able to do it. Like, is there a catch-22? Because like, if they're not going to write about it until it's successful, but it will not be successful until it gets PR. You know, how do you overcome that?
Well, hopefully it gets posted before the campaign's over.
So
Yeah.
they just kind of, well, how is the campaign successful without anyone hearing about it in those outlets?
That would be, I guess that's sort of like the more mainstream larger outlets for coming out. We did a lot of outreach on different social media sites and very specific online communities where young LGBT folks were participating in community and getting the word out that way.
I would think that nothing says you can't have a second go at crowdfunding if you've got the PR out there. Just do a second opportunity.
Yeah, this campaign was the second one that we did for that project. We did an Indiegogo a year and a half or 2 years before, just for $5,000, and we did this one for $20,000.
Did you like one platform over the other for any?
I preferred Kickstarter, absolutely. The all or nothing way that works was a much better motivator to make it happen, because it goes from I hope I can raise $20,000, but if I don't, that's going to suck, to I have no choice but to raise $28,000 or I'm wasting my time, and that changed how I was thinking about running the campaign. Any other questions? So to conclude, campaign video matters. I was looking up a more accurate statistic here. I found a few. One was that you're 30% likely to get funded without a video, 66% with a video. Another source said 85% more likely to get funded if you have a video. I don't know this correct statistic there. I don't know how this data was collected or calculated, but in general, having a video is definitely much better for your campaign than not having one. But it's also a component to a complete campaign strategy, that just having a good video alone is not going to get your campaign noticed or make it successful. And underlying each of these videos was a very specific intentional campaign strategy that affected the way the video was formatted and the outreach. And that good video alone won't make a successful campaign.
Yeah, I heard Indigo released some stats like a year ago. They said that campaigns with video raise twice as much as campaigns without.
Cool questions.
What kind of rewards did you have?
We had the very, like the traditional buttons and stickers, and then credit for the higher end ones. I think we really incentivized this $75 perk with DVD and some other stuff. Tickets to the premiere was in there as well. I don't recall the specifics. For Letters from Baghdad, it was, they had like, we gave away items that were kind of related to writing letters or to something about something to that effect. Also, the Honor of Women was on there, and then credit and packages to a premiere with a bunch of stuff in a tote bag. Yeah.
Talk a lot about demographics and targeting. I was interested in, have you ever run into a situation where you have to either broaden your messaging or make it more appeal to, you know, the middle, not necessarily the early adopters or whatever? How do you do that as someone who has to produce a video that could take, you know, anywhere from 4 weeks to like 6 months? If you run into that, and how do you quickly produce or come out with a video, or I mean, do you social? I'm assuming you use social. Or
I would say for Letters from Baghdad, that wasn't, knowing that audience, we weren't going to make any changes because those were the people, those networks that the filmmakers, the directors, and the executive producer had were definitely going to be the sources of money. I would say for coming out, we were trying to target more people. Hopefully, we showed enough footage of like the family members, so made it okay to relate to this project if you're not gay, for example. Though with that, that's kind of changed more recently now as the film is finishing up. We're kind of looking at the distribution and exhibition that we've more recently noticed as we're doing test screenings who's responding to the film. That would have changed our video for sure, because there's certain elements, the humor element is definitely what's people are responding to kind of down the middle, as opposed to the I would say emotional element of this coming out process specifically.
Okay.
Which kind of answers your question. Yeah.
Excuse me. How long are your pre-campaigns used to be? You make pre-campaigns, I think so. How long are them?
How long are the campaigns?
Pre-campaigns. Before the.
Oh, a few months usually. I think Letters from Baghdad was rushed because we wanted to launch directly in Women's History Month, and I think we started just March. We started planning it in January, so that gave us 2.5 months, I would say. I think for coming out, it was a bit longer than that. It was probably 3 months of prep work.
It's important for you to make pre.
Absolutely. That's where most of the work happened, is beforehand.
And then how long is the actual campaign?
About 30 days. There's different, more specific numbers, I think. Alex might know them. About, typically like the shorter the better, the campaign, but about 30, I would say, feels the most right. And if shorter than that, and it becomes, I would feel a little more panicked to try to do something in like 20 days.
Yeah, I think I say 30 is like the optimal time. Especially, I don't know, have you seen it in your personal experience, but usually what I hear is there was a big spike the first week and there's a big spike the last week. But usually the middle week is like very flat. So that's why having like a 60-day campaign really does not make it better than 30 days.
Okay.
Have you looked at the numbers and like the stats? Like
there's the peak in the beginning and the end for sure. And hopefully then this video content and this audience engagement, that's specifically to target that lull in the middle where people aren't contributing to the campaign. Maybe they think it's not going to be successful because you've only reached a certain percentage of your goal. There's plenty of times they can donate later, but if you can keep the people that have donated motivated, you can try to not let that swoop so low.
But there's no parameters enforced by Kickstarter. It's just
I
all
think that there
yours.
is a
Up to
maximum.
60, yeah.
I think it's up to 60 days maximum.
Yeah, I know. I saw that you raised $20,000 with your campaign coming out. What was the purpose of that money? Was that to create another film? Was that to reimburse you for the cost of your production for what you've already done? How was that money used?
That was for post-production costs, specifically paying our editor to finish the film, and then doing like score, sound, and color as well. We took that section out of the campaign video to make it shorter, even though it was still long, and we put it down embedded it in the body of the page.
I would think that the more money you have, to give a good presentation, the better your chances are to raise more funds through crowdfunding. So, is it unheard of to have a crowdfunding? I've put my own money into my production, my video production, but I haven't done a crowdfunding campaign. I want more money to have a better campaign. Can I use what I have? Is it unheard of to use what you have to get enough money to then come out with a big campaign that's for the world versus the smaller campaign for friends and family in the world?
Absolutely, and that's essentially what we did with coming out. We did a $5,000 Indigo campaign previously. That came specifically from our immediate networks. That did not branch out from Facebook, essentially, whereas this one had to. And I think that that's the issue that you run into there potentially, or something to keep in mind, is like when you're going to do each of those campaigns, because your immediate network is going to be where that first spike comes from. And if you ask for all of this money from them and then too quickly do another campaign, they might not be as willing to contribute again. But have you done campaigns before, like a crowdfunding campaign? It's also really helpful to do a smaller campaign first. We wouldn't have been successful if we did that $20,000 one immediately. And that was probably, I'd say, the third campaign that I've run, crowdfunding campaign, to do that one. You kind of figure out what's working and what is not working in these campaigns through the smaller ones. I would recommend it.
So the 20 was just for post, so you guys just financed all the upfront production yourself?
And had $5,000, and then it was just us. None of us were paid, and the equipment we owned.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what happens when it spills over. If their goal's 20 and they get 25, well, now all of a sudden they can actually pay themselves back for the 2 years of
Right.
time.
It's always other stuff, or color correction or sound.
Yeah. One of these days we'll be reimbursed, I'm sure. If you have any other questions, it's my email and Twitter handle right there.
So basically, you create the video and you use it as like a selling, like a distribution or e-commerce platform. So usually when people do crowdfunding, they think of it as actually, I have an idea and I want to launch it and see if people will like my idea, and if they like it, I'll build it. But you guys actually build it and you kind of use it as actually kind of selling e-commerce, right?
And that comes into play, especially with films in media that way. And in terms of the documentary fundraising and applying for grants in general, is that whole fundraising process is very much show us what you have, and then you might get the money. It's never, here's a piece of paper with my idea on it, I'll let me give you money. For products, for the puppy phone, for example, they have a non-working prototype, and they haven't gone into production with the product itself until after they do their campaign. They really want to see what people want, how popular it is before they do that.
For your production, what kind of business structure do you have? What are people contributing to? Are they contributing to a sole proprietorship? Are they contributing to an existing S corporation, LLC? And how do you work the entity which is receiving funds?
You mean with the client paying us, you mean?
No, for your project.
Like for coming
Were they contributing money to your production company? Were they contributing money to you personally? How
For that campaign, it was to me personally. That was set up through my personal Kickstarter campaign and went into my bank account. We didn't have an LLC for the film set up to receive any of that money.
Do you treat those as gifts? Do you treat that as income?
It was in like a supplemental income thing, which I did not actually put in the budget, was the taxes that I had to pay on it. Because we finished in August, we had all this money for post-production, which takes a long time. We're just now finishing post-production. So we had all of that money kind of hoarded up, and because we haven't spent any of it, pay taxes on it. So we are short the exact amount that we had to pay taxes on. Once again, thank you, Alex and Crowds Unite and Eisner and for having us here.
Yeah.